A little girl knocked and said, "They hurt my mom. She's dying." The CEO Millionaire stared in shock. The rain was relentless that night. Sheets of water hammered against the tall glass windows of the Cole estate, each drop a muted echo in the hollow silence of the house. Inside, Grayson Cole, 32, sat alone in his study, surrounded by sleek furniture, dim ambient lighting, and the cold glow of his laptop screen. His eyes scanned a development contract, but the words blurred meaningless against his mounting exhaustion. He rubbed his temples. The clock read 11:42 p.m. This life, his success status and wealth, he had built with discipline and total control. He was the kind of man who never missed a deadline, never raised his voice, and never let anything get too close. But tonight something was off. The silence felt heavier, and the rain outside didn't soothe him. It felt restless, just like he had been for the last 4 years. Then came the knock. At first he dismissed it, thinking it was probably just the wind. But it came again, soft, hesitant, almost too light to be real. A third knock followed, more urgent this time. Grayson stood cautious, yet curious. No one ever came here unannounced, especially not this late at night. He opened the door. A little girl stood there barefoot and soaked her sweater, clinging to her tiny frame. Her lips trembled, and her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. But it was her eyes, wide, goldeny brown, almost amber, that froze him. They were familiar, haunting. She couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old. "They hurt my mom," she whispered. "She's bleeding. She's dying. Please help." Grayson's world stopped. "What?" he asked, kneeling instinctively. The girl swayed her small hand, clutching his coat. "Please," she whispered again, rain and tears blending on her cheeks. Without hesitation, Grayson scooped her into his arms, wrapped her in his coat, and rushed to his car. He didn't ask how she'd found him. He didn't need the details. The fear in her voice had sliced straight through every wall he'd built. "Where?" he asked as he started the engine. She pointed with a trembling finger. "That way." The drive was barely 5 minutes, but the rain and the unknown stretched it into forever. They reached a crumbling apartment building just 2 blocks away, marked by peeling paint and flickering hallway lights. Grayson left the engine running and followed the girl up cracked cement steps. The apartment door hung ajar. He pushed it open. A wave of damp, stale air hit him. Then came the sight that stopped his breath. A large, rough-looking man rushed past him, nearly knocking him over as he bolted through the back door and into the storm. Inside the dim apartment, a woman lay motionless on the floor, blood pooling beneath her head. Grayson's heart clenched. It was Aurora. After 4 years, she had vanished without explanation, and here she was now, broken, bleeding, barely breathing. He dropped to his knees beside her. "Aura," he whispered, his voice strangled. She looked deathly pale, blood streaming from her temple and matting her hair. Luna let out a small sound, crouching beside her mother and clutching her limp hand. Grayson's hands shook as he checked for a pulse. "Still alive." He exhaled sharply, then took off his coat, wrapping it around her before lifting her into his arms. She felt far too light. Luna grabbed his pant leg as he stood. He looked down, meeting those amber eyes again. "It's going to be okay," he said, more to himself than to her. They ran through the rain to the car, Aurora unconscious in the back seat, with Luna beside her. Grayson drove like a man possessed. City lights blurred by every stoplight, dragged, and every pothole made him curse under his breath. She had disappeared after that night in Boston, leaving no message or number, just a memory he couldn't erase. He had searched quietly and discreetly, but she was gone until now. Now she bled in his back seat. Her name echoed in his head, and her daughter. Their daughter had just knocked on his door in the middle of a storm. Grayson didn't know what it meant yet, but one thing was clear: he was not going to lose her again. The steady beep of the heart monitor echoed in the sterile hospital room. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above, casting a pale glow across the white walls and the fragile figure in the bed. Aurora stirred her brow, twitching as pain bloomed at her temple. A low groan escaped her lips as the world came back slowly. bright lights, the smell of antiseptic cold sheets beneath her, and the dull throbbing ache in her skull. Then a voice, low, familiar, impossible, Aurora. Her eyes fluttered open, struggling to adjust. The first thing she saw was him, Grayson, sitting there, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes shadowed, and his fingers laced tightly as if he'd been holding himself still for hours. His jaw was tense, but his gaze held raw worry. She blinked, confused, then horrified. "No," she muttered. He rose slightly, stepping closer. "You're okay. You're safe now." Her voice came sharp and hoarse. "I don't need you here." Grayson froze mid-step, stunned. "Luna?" she asked, scanning the room with urgent eyes. "She's fine," he replied. "She's with a nurse down the hall. Safe, I promise." Aurora let out a breath, but it was short-lived. Her eyes narrowed. "You can go now," she said flatly. Grayson stared. You were unconscious, bleeding. Luna came to me. She knocked on my door in the middle of the storm. What was I supposed to do?" Aurora scoffed, turning her face away. There was pain there, not just physical. "Luna should never have had to go to you." Grayson flinched. "I didn't even know you lived near me." "Exactly," she snapped, "because I stayed as far away as I could." He opened his mouth, searching for words, but she cut him off. "You want to know what happened?" Her voice cracked bitter. "I was laid on rent sick, exhausted, and trying to take care of my daughter. The landlord sent some thug to collect. I begged for more time, but he shoved me. I hit my head on the table." She touched the side of her head and winced. "Luna saw it all. She ran out into the rain to find help, and somehow, by some cruel joke, she ended up at your doorstep." Grayson's hands curled into fists. He'd already pieced the story together through hospital intake notes and a neighbor's account. But hearing it from her, hearing the shame in her voice, it hit differently. He stepped closer, but her voice rose. "Don't. Just don't." She turned fully now, eyes blazing. 4 years, Grayson. 4. You didn't look for me." "I did," he said quickly. You didn't look hard enough," she snapped. "Or maybe you did and decided I wasn't worth the effort." He looked like he'd been struck, his lips parted, but he had no answer. Her voice dropped cold. "I've spent 4 years building a life out of scraps, learning to be a mother with nothing but fear and instinct. You don't get to walk in just because fate threw us into the same storm." "I'm not trying to—" "You are," she hissed. "Doing that thing where you play the noble man who shows up too late and pretends the damage never happened." Grayson took a breath. The burn behind his eyes returned. "I don't even know what I did wrong." Aurora laughed, a bitter, tired sound. "Of course you don't." Footsteps approached, and Luna peeked in, little fingers gripping the doorframe. "Mommy!" Aurora's body softened. She reached out. "Come here, sweetheart." Luna padded in and curled against her mother's side, casting a confused glance at Grayson. She remembered him, her rescuer, but now he looked like a stranger again. Grayson stepped back, sensing he wasn't welcome. "I'll give you space," he said softly. Aurora didn't respond. She was busy cradling her daughter, kissing her temple, as if for reassurance for them both. Grayson turned and left the room. His mind spun. 4 years ago, she had disappeared after the only night they'd shared, and he thought she chose to walk away. Now she blamed him. But for what? Outside the room, he leaned against the wall, his heart pounding harder than it should have. He had no idea what he'd broken, but now he understood whatever it was, it had shattered her. The rain had stopped, but the storm inside Grayson Cole had not. He sat in his darkened study, the fireplace flickering in the background, an untouched bourbon in his glass. The silence was deafening, pressing against him like a weight on his chest. He had changed into a fresh shirt, but the image of Aurora's blood on the previous one still haunted him, vivid and real. Sleep had become impossible. His mind kept circling back to the hospital, to the way she had looked at him like a stranger, no worse, like someone she resented. And then the words she hurled at him, "You did not look hard enough." Grayson leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and buried his face in his hands. It should have been just one night, a fleeting moment. 4 years ago at that charity auction in Boston, she had not been part of the crowd he was used to. She had stood out wearing a simple blue dress while everyone else flaunted diamonds and designer labels. She smiled at him like she saw through the tailored suit and the executive title like she saw him. "You're not like the others," she had said with a laugh over champagne. "How do you know that?" he had asked. "I just do." They had danced, talked, and laughed more than he had in years. By the end of the night, he had kissed her, and she had kissed him back with the same quiet urgency that had been building between them all evening. And when the night ended in his hotel room, it had not felt like a mistake. It had felt like something rare. But in the morning she was gone. No note, no message, no last name, just the imprint of her on the pillow beside him, and an emptiness that had taken root ever since. He had searched, half believing it was foolish to try, but no one seemed to know her. No one even remembered seeing her that night. It was like she had vanished into thin air. And now she was 5 blocks away from him in a crumbling apartment raising a daughter. Her daughter Luna. Grayson stood suddenly and paced across the room, his heart pounding. Those eyes that coloring the slight tilt of her chin, it was not just imagination. It could not be. He needed answers. The next morning he returned to the apartment building. It was old, forgotten, cracked in places, like it was barely holding itself together, much like the woman who lived inside it. He knocked. Aurora opened the door only halfway, shielding Luna behind her leg. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice guarded. "I just wanted to check in to see if Luna is okay." "She is." There was an awkward silence. Aurora moved to shut the door, but something caught his eye inside a burst of color in crayon, a small drawing taped to the wall beside the couch. "May I?" Grayson gestured, pausing. "May I see her drawings?" Aurora hesitated, then sighed. "You have 2 minutes." Grayson stepped in quietly, careful not to let his eyes linger too long on her. Luna sat cross-legged on the floor with crayons spread around her. She looked up at him shyly, but said nothing. On the paper in front of her was a drawing, 3 stick figures, a woman with brown hair, a child with pigtails, and a tall man with dark hair and golden eyes. His breath caught. "That's me, Mommy and Daddy," Luna explained sweetly, pointing at each figure with pride. Aurora's shoulders stiffened. Her back was turned, but he saw it. Grayson crouched down beside the little girl. "Luna," he said gently, "how old are you?" She held up 3 fingers, then hesitated and added half of a fourth. 3.5, she said with a giggle. Grayson froze. 3.5. His eyes flicked up to Aurora. She was already watching him, her face unreadable, but her hands were clenched at her sides. 3.5. He repeated, his voice quiet, shaken. Aurora nodded once. Yes. The room felt too small, the air too thick. The math added up too perfectly. Grayson's world narrowed to a single thought, echoing over and over again in his mind. Luna might be his. And suddenly, the last 4 years took on an entirely different shape. Grayson stood in front of the sleek glass doors of the DNA diagnostics lab, the envelope in his hands trembling, despite his best effort to appear composed. He had not slept, had barely eaten. The last few days had been a blur of memories and emotions, all centered around a little girl with amber eyes and a smile that haunted him. He'd taken the sample quietly, 1 strand of Luna's hair from the back of her sweater after their second meeting. He hadn't told anyone, not even himself. The technician had said 3 days. Now the results were ready. His name was on the envelope. His future was inside. He tore it open slowly. Line by line he read, "Probability of paternity, 99.98%. The paper fluttered slightly in his hand, but he didn't feel it. His lungs refused to expand. She was his. Luna was his daughter. He closed his eyes. For a long moment he could not move. Relief, guilt, anger, awe, all of it collapsed into silence. The weight of 4 lost years settled on his chest. She was his, and Aurora had never told him. The next morning, just after sunrise, he went to her apartment. The sky was still gray. His knock was sharp, immediate. Aurora opened the door, startled by the intensity in his eyes. Before she could speak, he held up the envelope, his voice low but cutting. "You hid her from me for over 3 years." Aurora froze. He stepped inside without waiting, his hands clenched. "She's mine, isn't she?" She didn't answer. He dropped the envelope on the table. It landed with a soft thud like a gavel ending a trial. "I have the results. 99.98%. Her shoulders tensed, her face hardened. "You don't get to act outraged," she snapped, crossing her arms. "You don't get to show up waving papers like you have the moral high ground." "I'm her father," he said through clenched teeth. "Now you are," her voice rose. "Where were you 3 years ago when I was sick, working double shifts, terrified I was failing her every day? I didn't know," he growled. "Because I made sure you didn't," she shouted, then paused, her chest heaving. "Because you didn't deserve to know." Grayson recoiled. "Why?" Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "I saw you," she said quietly. "The morning after at the fundraiser, you were with her." "Who?" he asked. "That woman. Tall, brunette, perfect posture, clinging to your arm like she belonged there." Grayson frowned. "You said something to her. I was across the room, but I heard you. I've never been serious about any of them." Her voice cracked. "You looked cold like the night before, meant nothing." He took a breath. The memory hit him like a slap. "That was Vanessa," he said. "My ex. My family tried to push us back together, and she showed up uninvited. I was telling her it was over." Aurora blinked. "I said, I've never been serious about any of them like you think. I didn't know you were there." She shook her head slowly, her eyes full of disbelief. "And something else. I thought," she whispered, "I thought I was just another one of them." "You weren't." Silence stretched between them. "I would have been there," he said. "For you, for her, every step." Aurora looked away. "But you weren't, and I had to be." He nodded, jaw tight, swallowing pain. "She's mine." "Yes," she whispered. "I want to know her." Her eyes met his, searching. "Then prove to me you're not the man I thought you were." And for the first time in 4 years, Grayson saw something in her eyes that wasn't anger. It was fear, not of him, but of letting him in again. Grayson did not storm back into Luna's life with declarations or demands. He didn't claim the title of father or try to rewrite history with grand gestures. Instead, he approached quietly, gently, like a man stepping into a space he knew was sacred and fragile. The first time he returned after the truth unraveled, Aurora answered the door, hesitation still thick in her expression. But she didn't turn him away. "I brought something for Luna," he said, holding out a small, neatly wrapped box. Inside were a set of watercolor paints and a drawing pad. "She loves to draw," Aurora admitted reluctantly, as if saying it aloud gave him too much. Grayson nodded. When Luna came toddling out in her pink socks and oversized shirt, she blinked up at him, then at the gift, before breaking into a shy grin. "Thank you, Uncle Grayson." From that moment, he made it his mission to learn her world on her terms. He took her to the little park a few blocks away where the slides creaked and the swings groaned, but children's laughter still breathed life into peeling paint and cracked sidewalks. He didn't hover. He sat on the bench and clapped when she went down the slide, clumsily but triumphantly. He tied her shoelaces and carried Band-Aids in his pocket just in case. At home, they sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by crayons, colored pencils, and watercolor puddles. Luna drew suns with too many rays and houses that leaned sideways, always with 3 figures in front, a girl, a woman, and a tall man with messy dark hair. "Is that you?" Grayson once asked, pointing at the tall figure. Luna shrugged and giggled. "Maybe." Aurora watched them from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed loosely over her chest. She didn't interfere, nor did she smile, but her eyes no longer carried the sharpness they once did. Something in them had softened just a little. In the evenings, Grayson read to Luna fairy tales, silly poems, even short stories he found online. At first, she listened with wide eyes and polite silence. But by the third visit, she curled beside him, her head on his arm, correcting his pronunciation when he did funny voices. Every moment with her chipped away at something hardened in him, at walls he hadn't realized he'd built. She asked questions without filters, laughed without apology, and trusted without hesitation. It undid him in the quietest, most irreversible ways. But he never said the words, never told her he was her father. That truth he knew had to come when the time was right for her, and maybe for Aurora too. One evening, after hours of drawing and stories, Luna fell asleep on the worn couch, her small hand still clutching Grayson's finger. Aurora stood nearby, folding a blanket to cover her when Luna stirred and murmured barely louder than a breath, "I wish Uncle Grayson was really my dad." The words hung in the room like a bell that had just been struck soft at first, then echoing with depth long after the sound stopped. Aurora froze. Grayson didn't move. Neither spoke. She tucked the blanket around her daughter, her hands trembling. Without a word, she walked to the kitchen and he followed, careful not to disturb the sleeping child. In the dim kitchen light, Aurora stood facing the sink, her back to him. "I heard her," she said finally, her voice low, steady, but breaking at the edges. "I did too," Grayson replied. She turned slightly, her profile silhouetted by the hallway light. Her eyes glistened, and this time she didn't hide it. "She dreams about a father she doesn't know she already has." Grayson didn't answer. There was nothing he could say that would carry the weight of what had been lost or what still might be rebuilt. Aurora wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, then looked at him. "Maybe I was wrong about you," she whispered. For the first time since Boston, she saw him not as the man who vanished, but maybe, just maybe, as the man trying to make things right. And Grayson, standing there in the quiet, understood something had shifted. It was small, but it was enough. It started with a photo, a grainy image taken by a paparazzo Grayson and Aurora, walking hand in hand through the park, Luna skipping ahead. The article that followed was worse. Billionaire CEO's secret family, mysterious woman and child, spotted with Grayson Cole. Aurora stared at the headline on her phone, her stomach twisting, her fingers trembling as she scrolled, reading every insinuation, every accusation dressed as speculation. Words like social climber, illegitimate child, and intentional entrapment leapt out like claws. They hadn't even blurred Luna's face. Grayson found out almost immediately. His PR team monitored everything. But it wasn't the press that stunned him most. It was the woman behind it, Vanessa, his ex-fiancée, the same woman Aurora had seen that fateful morning in Boston. Grayson had ended things years ago, making it clear there was no future, but clearly she hadn't let go. Now she'd gone public, painting Aurora as a manipulative mistress who'd ensnared a billionaire with a child and a sob story. She was feeding the tabloids, fueling the fire, and Aurora burned in silence. She didn't argue, didn't fight back. She packed. When Grayson arrived that evening, the apartment was a quiet battlefield of cardboard boxes and half-filled suitcases. Luna was asleep on the couch, her favorite blanket tucked beneath her chin. Aurora stood at the table, folding Luna's clothes with mechanical precision. Grayson stepped inside. "What are you doing?" Aurora didn't look up. "Leaving." "No." His voice was sharp. "Yes," she replied calmly, finally meeting his eyes. "You think I can raise Luna in a spotlight I never asked for, where strangers feel entitled to judge her? Judge me. We'll handle it." "There is no we," she snapped, not with anger but with pain. "Grayson, I am not built for your world. I don't have the armor. I won't let my daughter grow up thinking her worth depends on who her father is or what people write about her." "You're overreacting." "No, I'm protecting her." She reached into her coat pocket and handed him a folded letter. He hesitated, so she set it on the table. "I was going to leave this for you." Grayson unfolded it and read, "Luna needs a father, but not at the cost of her peace. I know you love her. I know you're trying, but I can't let her grow up in a world where love comes with conditions and cameras. I'm sorry. Aurora. The paper shook in his hands. You can hate me, she said quietly. I deserve that. But Luna deserves more than this circus. Grayson closed his eyes. When he opened them, his voice was low. You're right. She does. Aurora's breath caught. I won't fight you, he added, stepping back. But you should know I didn't sleep last night. I stood outside your building until sunrise. She blinked. I kept thinking if I'd done just one more thing right, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Maybe you'd still trust me. Her voice was barely a whisper. I do want to trust you. Then stay. He wasn't begging or pleading. He was offering. Not for me, he said, taking a step closer. For her. Luna deserves to wake up in a home where both her parents believe in her future, even if they're still figuring out everything else. Aurora looked toward the couch where Luna slept, her cheeks flushed in peaceful sleep. She let out a shaky breath. You stood outside all night. He nodded. And you're still here. I'll always be here. Silence filled the space between them this time, not with tension, but with possibility. Slowly, Aurora set down the shirt she had been folding. She did not unpack, but she didn't keep packing either. Aurora never gave an answer. She did not say she would stay. But the next morning, the suitcases were still in the corner, unopened. The half-packed boxes remained untouched, and the apartment, though quiet, no longer felt like it was holding its breath. Grayson did not ask questions. He did not press her for promises or try to make up for the past with grand words. Instead, he showed up again and again with groceries, with storybooks, with small things Luna liked, a sketch pad, a bag of chocolate chip cookies, a soft, stuffed rabbit that became her new favorite. He carved space in their world without pushing himself into it. He became a steady presence in their day-to-day life, a steady hand when the faucet leaked, a familiar voice reading bedtime stories, a silent companion who sat on the floor coloring next to Luna. Aurora remained cautious, always watching. But with each passing day, her gaze held less tension, her jaw less tight. Sometimes she caught herself smiling at the way Grayson let Luna braid his hair while he negotiated business deals on speakerphone. Sometimes she laughed quiet and surprised when Luna made him wear glitter stickers on his suit jacket and Grayson never removed them. Then, one Thursday night, everything shifted again. Luna woke with a fever. It climbed quickly, leaving her cheeks flushed and her breathing shallow. Aurora panicked. Her hands shook as she tried to find the thermometer, then her phone, then the pediatrician's number. Grayson took one look at Luna and didn't wait for permission. He scooped the little girl into his arms and said, "We're going to the hospital." Aurora followed without protest. The next 48 hours blurred into one long stretch of cold chairs, beeping monitors, and sterile white corridors. Doctors ran tests, nurses gave updates. Luna drifted in and out of sleep, murmuring for her mom, then for Grayson. Grayson never left her side. He held her hand through every temperature spike, whispered stories when her dreams turned to whimpers, and paced the hall when the nurses said she needed rest. Aurora watched from the chair in the corner, watching him fold a blanket around their daughter, watching him soften in ways she had never imagined he could. She didn't know how to tell him how much it meant, so for once she said nothing. When Luna's fever finally broke on the second night, Grayson slumped forward in the hospital chair, exhaustion written into every line of his body. His head fell onto the edge of the bed beside Luna's small hand. He didn't move. Aurora stood from her corner, crossed the room quietly, and stood beside him. For a long moment, she just looked at him, this man who had once been a memory and was now so undeniably real. Then gently she laid her hand on his shoulder. He stirred, startled at first, but when his eyes met hers, she didn't look away. "Thank you," she said softly. His brow furrowed as if unsure what she meant. She swallowed. "For not giving up. Not on her, not on me." He searched her face, and in that quiet moment, there was no bitterness, no blame, just the fragile truth of two people who had hurt and survived, and somehow still found their way back to this shared breath. I gave up once," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought walking away was the only way to protect myself. But you stayed." Grayson nodded slowly, his voice low. "I had to." Aurora sat beside him, and for the first time in a long time there was no distance between them. Just silence, just closeness, just a beginning. The sun hung low in the late afternoon sky, casting a golden glow across the park as children's laughter rang out in the distance. Leaves rustled softly in the breeze, and the air was warm, filled with the scent of grass and late summer petals. It was one of those rare, perfect days that did not demand anything, just the quiet joy of being. Grayson walked along the winding path, his shoes crunching softly against the gravel. On one side of him, Aurora kept pace, her hair pulled back, her eyes calm in a way they had not been for years. On the other, a few steps ahead, Luna darted through patches of sunlight like a butterfly, her small feet chasing after imaginary shapes in the air. They walked in an easy rhythm now, no more tension, no more silence, heavy with unsaid words. Just the sound of the breeze of their daughter's laughter and the shared heartbeat of something slowly becoming whole. Aurora turned her face toward the sun, her lips curled into a faint smile. Grayson watched her for a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low but certain. She looked over at him, her expression open. "I missed 4 years," he continued. 4 years of not knowing she existed. 4 years of not seeing her first steps, hearing her first words, watching her become who she is. Aurora slowed a little, her eyes softening. "I cannot change that," he said. "And I do not expect you to forget it either." She stopped walking, facing him fully now. Grayson took a breath, then said, "But if you'll let me, I'd like to be there for everything else. All of it, the scraped knees, the school plays, the nights she's too scared to sleep, and the mornings she wakes up asking for pancakes." Aurora blinked fast, her hand instinctively going to her chest. "I want to be there," he added. "Not just as her father, but for you too, if you'll let me walk with you. Not behind, not ahead, beside you." She stared at him, her lips parting just slightly, her throat tight. "I'm not good with speeches," he said with a wry smile. "I don't have a ring or a plan or even the right words, just this." He reached out gently, taking her hand in his fingers, intertwining slowly, deliberately. "And the promise that I will not walk away again." Aurora swallowed hard, her eyes glistening. "Only if you promise," she whispered, "never to disappear on me, on us. I swear." He said, his voice steady. She nodded, unable to speak. A single tear traced down her cheek, but this time it was not from pain. It was relief. It was finally letting go. From a few feet ahead, Luna's small voice called out excitedly, "Mommy, look what I drew!" They turned together. Luna stood beside a chalk drawing she had made on the paved path, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a sun that had too many rays and a sky that was more green than blue. But right in the center of it, she had drawn a big red heart. "See?" she beamed. "It's us." Grayson squeezed Aurora's hand. She looked up at him, eyes shining. A family, maybe not perfect, maybe a little bruised and rebuilt, but real. And finally, together. And just like that, a door once shut by silence opened again. This time with love, forgiveness, and a little girl's chalk-drawn heart. Grayson, Aurora, and Luna didn't become perfect, but they became real. They were held together not by flawless beginnings, but by choosing to stay, to try, and to love again. If this story touched you, please subscribe and hit that like button to support soul-stirring stories. Your support brings more heartfelt tales to life stories of hope, healing, and second chances. We'll see you in the next one. Music.